the fundamentals of supply chain remain the same, which is agility, with resilience and visibility that the customer wants, or in every supply chain in every organization wants. However, the three most disruptive things would be: one is technology led by AI, and how AI will shift the entire demand planning and forecasting with the help of machine learning as well. And secondly, to bring in more agility, we will have the supply networks working very, very strongly and more collaboratively. So I think technology will be the backbone on which your network and your supply agility from manufacturing and logistics perspective will play a very, very critical role.
I think the key point here is it's not about what are the top three disruptions in the coming years. It's clearly said there will be disruptions. When we was looking before COVID, there was once in a while an interruption, but after COVID we have learned there's one after the other. So it's not about that which will happen, it's a point that will happen things. And if it's logistics, if it's transportation, if it's supply chain, there's many kind of things which can happen. And I think the point is we have to prepare for this and have to be aware that this will be not a one-time event and we are over and we are done. So I think the point really is about we have to be agile and flexible in a way that we always can adjust into these kind of disruptions what happens.
We're looking at how we increase resilience across a number of different areas. I think in terms of infrastructure and systems, we're looking at the facilities that we operate and how we build additional automation into the existing capability. It gives us greater capacity, and it also increases our efficiency in terms of being able to operate and make sure that the supply of medicines to hospitals, medical centres, pharmacies, drugstores, and ultimately to patients is ensured. I think also from a technology perspective in terms of visibility platforms, so that we have greater understanding of product location from the time it comes into our facility to the time that it reaches the customer. And how we integrate some of those systems also with the clients that we're serving, as well as the customers, ultimately the customers. I think also from a process perspective, looking at how we build more agile, more robust business continuity, business contingency plans into our operations, and not just put those down on paper, but actually test the scenarios that we're looking at. We live in a high risk geography with the potential for volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, typhoons, cyclones. So we need to have our operations in a position to be able to respond to those, as well as the types of disruptions that are occurring with the geopolitical situation at the moment. And I think then also from a people perspective, making sure that as we become more digitised, more digitalised, that we have more digitally capable teams that are working in our facilities that can utilise the technology, the visibility tools, the automation that's being implemented to make the business more robust.
One very important thing is SNOP is the very critical backbone of any supply chain in any industry organization. More so in pharma, collaboration will be required. Collaboration, when I say, with the supplier, with the manufacturer, with the logistics team, with the business team, and understanding the end market situation. So SNOP, collaboration, demand forecasting more on ground with the marketing and sales team, and also the supply side will be integrated through one network. And I think that will really help in terms of preparing ourselves for any future disruptions.
That's a good question, because it fits to the question about what is the issue and how to solve it easy. So I think the point is it's not an easy answer. It's not the one thing you can think about, this is the only thing you need to do. I think there's a couple of things which need to be considered. One is agility. You need to be always agile in a way of moving from A to B, from mode of transportation, from way of transportation, in terms of supply chain planning. So I think when you realize that this is a world which is not anymore this kind of one way works only, the kind of agility is kind of very important. And what you have to be considered in a way is that when you be agile in a way, you also have to be forecasting and demand planning in a way that it's not kind of chaotic. So agile does not mean you do whatever you like and whatever you need and totally disrupted. So it has to be in a constant, frequent way, but pretty agile is very key still on it.
I think it plays a really important role. In many of the countries in Asia, the bulk of life science distribution is performed by private companies. And so the engagement between the private sector and the public sector, which is providing a lot of the healthcare infrastructure, is incredibly important. This plays out, I think, in terms of having greater engagement between the private sector and the public sector, and how the supply chain capabilities of distributors and LSPs in the markets can more effectively ensure the uninterrupted supply of medicines to patients. But it also means supporting the capability and capacity building of public sector supply chains themselves, because in many cases patients are accessing the healthcare through the government hospital system. So really ensuring that there's continuity and integrity of supply chain from the point of manufacture to the point of consumption by patients.
My name is Tam Nguyen. I'm the Deputy Director of Research at St Vincent Hospital, Melbourne. In terms of the life sciences, supply chains play a role in disaster management. Certainly, that's where we're getting, I suppose, the drugs and materials to the patients in need, but also potentially in disaster zones where, could be certain test kits and so on and so forth, which is quite critical. And I think the important part is in a general sort of disaster management where potentially a disaster zone where patients do need to be able to be on trials, and therefore it's critical to have the investigational product available. And we've seen that certainly through COVID. Everyone knows that COVID, that was the biggest disaster management plan in the world. And so I think we've got a lot to learn from that too.
I think that's a great question, and I think because supply chain practitioners by nature have a common understanding of what supply chain is and how it's evolved from being just a logistics or just physical distribution. So I think there's great opportunity for supply chain networking and discussions. Benchmarking of industries. The pharma supply chain is never the fastest in terms of its technological evolution and the introduction of change because of the components of validation and qualification, for example, of all the different components, from the infrastructure that we use to the technologies and systems that we deploy, the packaging systems we use, the types of vehicles that we use as well. But certainly industries such as fashion, fast-moving consumer goods, set benchmarks that create opportunities for us to learn from and for us to be able to improve the efficiency and effectivity of the supply chains that we operate in life science. So I think the key difference between pharmaceutical supply chain and the supply chains of other industries is really the requirement for validation and qualification and validation of process and also technologies. The concept, very simply, is fit for purpose. Fit for purpose means making sure that the products that are consumed that reach the patient are, in terms of product integrity, maintained and safe for patient consumption. So this starts from the very purchasing of raw materials, excipients, packaging supplies, pre-manufacturing, right through the manufacturing process, from manufacturing through the distribution, so the different modal choices that are made between air freight and shipping lanes, and making sure that temperature, environmental conditions can be maintained from the point of dispatch in the manufacturing nation to the point of sale in the market that's performing the distribution. And this follows through into the distribution centres that store and ultimately distribute products to the hospitals, medical centres, pharmacies and drugstores. So it's a much more risk-averse approach to supply chain management, and that makes the process of change more complex to introduce. Not impossible, but just a little bit more complex. And I think to overcome that type of complexity requires really, when we think about introducing new technologies or process change, making sure that the quality aspects, the sustainability aspects, the health and safety aspects are all embedded in project from the very concept level. And that helps to make the process a little easier.
Actually, a lot, and I think part of that is the technology, where we've seen the role of AI playing in a lot of the planning, the data analytics, the execution of all of the aspects involved in supply chains. But critically for me, it's about getting the drugs, the medications to people who in needs most, and that's creating impact. And certainly we see that from Australia, where remote part of Australia, people getting access to drugs, medications and devices that helps them, and definitely that bridging the gap of that equity of access for everyone. So that's the impact across that I'm very excited about, the application of technology that helps to drive that, bridge that gap.